Bob, I just have a 1 point of order before we get too far in.
You have what?
I just have 1 point of order before we get too far in.
Okay, I'll go over the roll call and then why don't you come in with a point of order?
Sounds like a plan.
Is that all right? Okay, so I have here myself, Bob Morlino, the chair of LEPC, Kevin McAllister, I see here already. Jeff Campbell, I have. Is Dan Cusio on? No. Dara Zink, I see you on. Jeff Campbell's there. Bruce Mellendy? No. Christine Ford? No. Sean Coleman? Jonathan DeLabro? Bruce Mellendy, Alyssa Sabeto? I don't see. We have Patrick McLaughlin, Mike Skaza, I see. Tiana Smith, are you here from GMP? Nope. I have Emily Harris, I see. August Toynton from Toynton, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you. From the Vermont Department of Health, Dorian Evans from the University of Vermont. Brandy Latimer. Brandy, where are you from?
North Hero or Grand Isle County.
Oh, Grand Isle. Okay, so you handle, are you in place of Sean Coleman?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just put your name in that box. I have a Keith Kuban.
Yes. Yeah. I'm the emergency management planner for Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission.
For Central Vermont. Okay, great. So that's where Jeff Campbell, you represent them too, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're the emergency manager. Sorry, while I write this down. For Central Vermont. We have some other names here. Let's see. Charles Coley, I know that's CISA, Region 1.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Yeah. Brad Roy.
Yep, present with Vermont Rural Water Association.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, did I miss anyone?
Alex.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I have Alex. I already marked you there. Alex Northern.
Thank you.
And Andrew Leroux. I also marked you guys there. I marked you there. Yeah, sorry. As I saw your pictures pop up.
And Christine Ford came in right after you had called for her.
Christine Ford. Okay, great. Chittenden County. Okay. All right. Anybody I miss? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Pat. He has a point of order, but let me just tell you today that it's going to be a short meeting. I woke up at 6 this morning and had an email from our guest speaker, Lenny from EPA, Lenny Wallace, who was our speaker today and was actually going to be presenting for probably an hour and a half, sent me a message. He had a family emergency and could not make it today. So I apologize for myself, apologize for Lenny Wallace of the EPA, who unfortunately at the very last second could not make it today. So my apologies. Chief McLaughlin, you have a point of order?
Yep, just wanted to let everybody know, moving forward, as of July 1, there were new public meeting rules and state legal offices team that we need to follow that for this group. And so we will be recording and posting video and audio to the Division of Fire Safety's YouTube channel. So that's why this has been recorded. And this will be available to the public through our YouTube channel and posted to the web. And just want to make sure everyone understands that. It's a new state law per July 1st. So we are working to comply with that. In the future, we may have a simulcast streaming service available on our YouTube channel, but we weren't able to do that today. But we'll move forward and try to assimilate that in the future.
Oh, I also want to acknowledge Emily Harris from VEM, who is on. And Emily, also thank you for setting up this Teams meeting, which you did some weeks ago.
And
You're-
just so everyone's tracking, going forward, that's going to be Pat, is my understanding. Is that accurate, Pat? Yes. Okay, we had an offline conversation through
Yes.
a couple of different people. So moving forward, Pat's actually going to be securing the room and the Teams meeting.
Right, correct. That's my understanding as well. Okay, on the agenda, there's the agenda. You should all have a copy of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Of course, I've already deleted Len's presentation, Len Wallace's presentation, so that's deleted. Any other changes? Okay. Also, you should all have received the minutes of the April meeting. Are there any changes, corrections to the April meeting minutes? Sorry. Okay, we'll accept the April meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye. Or raise your
Aye.
hand. Okay, opposed? None.
Bob, I just
Okay,
have one
Pat.
change.
Yep.
Change to the agenda. I guess if we wanted to talk in a little more depth now that Len's on, not going to be here, about our ammonia call. Little interesting incident. So I don't know if we want to pop that in to make the meeting somewhat worthwhile for everybody and exchange our.
Yeah, I have you on, Pat, there and updating on the S310, the bill, the CERC Tier 2 and hazmat team. So it's on the agenda. So
Okay.
I would suggest we had three very interesting calls since the last meeting, which Pat can bring us up to date on. We had some I would say significant hazardous material calls.
Sure.
So Pat, I'm going
Yeah.
to turn it over
So
to you.
S310 is no longer S310. It is Act 46. And it is the Resilience and Flooding and Mitigation Act. That's probably not correct, but something along those lines. And the implications to the state hazmat in LEPC in USAR is that there was about 250 in one-time funding that's getting allocated to the Vermont Urban Search and Rescue Team, which facilitated over 210 water rescues during last year's flooding. And that funding originally was coming out of the HAZChem fund to support the Vermont State Urban Search and Rescue Team. And now, for at least 1 year anyways, they have some general funding to continue their mission in supporting water rescues and assisting municipalities throughout the state in technical rescues. So that gives a little bit of some breathing room to the state hazmat team to facilitate some updates to our equipment and technology. Some of our equipment is getting to be 25, 30 years old and needing some replacement. And we have started that process within this fiscal year to replace some of those older technologies with updated technologies to better serve the communities in and around the state of Vermont. So that's kind of the update on well, 310 now Act 46. Thank you. Oh, 143. Thank you. That was 46. That's close. Too many numbers in my head right now. Thanks, Emily. Emily put the link to the ACK in the chat. So it's 143, ACK 46. I was close. Only up by a couple hundred. For the hazmat team, we were off to a pretty strong end and a pretty strong start to the year for calls. As Bob said, we've had a couple of calls. I'll knock out the two that happened on the same day, and then we'll come back to the Killington call. Killington call was a much more complex one of those calls you got to think on. Not that other hazmat calls aren't, but this one took a lot of brain power. So we'll get back to that one in a minute. But I believe it was last week in June, maybe first week. I can't remember the exact day. We got a call from Rutland Town for a propane tank that had been run over by a car at a hotel in downtown, Rutland Town, just outside the city. They were on scene. The top had been blown off and was actively venting. The crew from 2 responded with truck 2, trailer 2, which is our propane unit, USAR support vehicle for tow, and car 1. We also deployed our UAS systems for the first time on this scene to get an overview and downrange visual. We deployed multiple metering units. We did have, in some locations, LAL over 20% in the outside air, which is our turnback. So we worked to mitigate that. We disconnected a significant amount of power in that area as we had overhead power. This 1,000-gallon tank was in series to 5 other 1,000-gallon tanks in a tank farm. And so the crews went in, isolated, removed the vehicle from the tank, and then spent the next 10 to 12 hours in the mitigation of the single tank. We were going to use a bell system, which if the top riser and underground is removed off, leaves a hole in the top. And this bell we have that sits in it and locks onto it, creates a seal around the top, and then has a pressure gauge, high pressure gauge on the side. And you can actually pump off from a ruptured valve. We've got one of them in the state. Working to build another one. They are not a manufactured piece of product. It takes a welder and some propane technicians to create this, and it's to be used under pretty stringent circumstances. But by the time we were able to get that piece to the scene, we had hydraulically removed all the propane, which is another method. You add water to the tank and it floats the propane. Unfortunately, that method can sometimes be a more unstable method because you don't have control of the propane and you're letting nature and physics and chemistry do its job. So that went really well, and we didn't have any catastrophic releases. Nobody was injured. The tank was completely removed from the scene. All the propane was dissipated. The worst case was we had 2 hotels that were unoccupiable for the night, and a Taco Bell and a Delta Dental facility that couldn't operate for the evening. So minimal impact to the community with a remedy and a successful mission. At about 9 o'clock that night, a call came about at 4 o'clock. We cleared there about 7 or 8 in the morning. At 9 o'clock at night, watch officer called me, and they had a hydrochloric acid rail car in Brattleboro that was actively leaking. So while we were deployed with truck 2, we deployed truck 3 and a crew, along with the 15 CST for additional manpower support, and responded to Brattleboro. They were working to load the cars in the train and doing their rail inspection, and came up to this hydrochloric acid rail car that was actively leaking. That rail car had a malfunctioning, what we believe was a malfunctioning gasket. Bob, you were on that scene. I was still committed to the Brattleboro car, so maybe I'll defer to you for some more detail on this. This was another technical level A entry with some jungle gym climbing on top of a rail car and some other work. So I'll let Bob kind of get into the details.
Yeah, so Brattleboro Fire Department arrived there and assessed the scene before we arrived, and uh, were smart enough to, of course, and trained enough to stay away from this leaking rail car. So it was leaking from the top of the rail car. It was you could see the fuming hydrochloric acid coming out the top. Um, we were Chief McLaughlin was able to get us a picture of what the top of those rail cars look like, because some of these rail cars are different. HCL rail car has a different housing on top than, for instance, what we normally would consider a high pressure rail car. So we were able to understand what we had up there. There was a conversation with the rail companies, and they gave us two options. Option one was to try to tighten down the bolts on the rail car. That's a picture of the two of the hazmat techs up there in level A suits trying to tighten the bolts around the gasket. Uh, the gasket was, the bolts were already tight. The gaskets either wasn't there or was leaking. So the next operation was to go to the other fitting on there, which can release the pressure in the tank. So what was happening here was that we believe that the hydrochloric acid in here was, because of the hot weather, had expanded and was pushing up through the tube that goes to the bottom of the tank, and was pushing up. Normally, the gasket should hold that pressure without any problem, but evidently the gasket was bad and the gasket was leaking. So we had to relieve the pressure, and option B was to open up the top of the other fitting, the one you see to the left, and there's a valve on there. The technicians released that pressure, left that open, and we were able to stop the leak. Prior to that, by the way, some of the hydrochloric acid was running down the side of the tank where you see that red paint. And we put a pool underneath there to collect what hydrochloric acid was leaking on the ground. So we mitigated that and then went to this step. And then we were able to leave the scene by about 2:30 in the morning, and left a rail person there to monitor the scene, make sure no one got near it. And then the next morning, the rail company had a crew come in, and I don't know if you have any information on that, Pat. I assume they came in and changed the gasket. You're muted. Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
We were, I was just trying to find the other page. We and the gasket that we're talking about. So I guess this is a common fail point on these. And this PowerPoint was something we were able to find during our research. And kind of what they were looking at. We originally thought we could use a chlorine kit, but the valving was much different. And so we were reviewing this document with them on what they were trying to adjust. And as Bob was talking about those bolts, and this is a common fail point. We believe that it was overpressurized, and that during the heating time, it just completely overpressurized the vapor space. This is a low pressure tank, so it's not supposed to be in pressure. And they were able to, I believe, relieve one of these lines, and I'm not 100% sure which one it was. And maybe Bob, you can help.
Yeah, go to that other picture you had with where it just shows the one. Yeah, right, that one right there. So it was the liquid line that was leaking. If you look on top of there, there's 4 bolts. It was leaking from that the one to the right.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, it's the liquid one that's labeled liquid line. So that has a pipe that goes all the way down to the bottom of the tank. So the pressure was building up in the tank, and it was pushing hydrochloric acid liquid up to the top. And that valve on the top right there where it says liquid line was leaking. So again, they tried to tighten those bolts to see if that would stop it. It did not stop it. So then they went to the air inlet valve. So that valve there, is just an opening to the top of the tank. So they removed all of the nuts on that, the 4 nuts on that air inlet valve, opened it up to the atmosphere. And then there's a valve where that arrow is, air inlet valve. They opened that valve, released the pressure. We could hear it hiss out, as a matter of fact. And then once the pressure was released there, we left that open so that it would not build up any more pressure. And then the valve on the liquid line eventually stopped leaking. So that's how that whole problem was mitigated. But again, it required 2 entries to the rail car. One was the initial entry in level B suits to put a pool underneath the rail car to collect the leaking hydrochloric acid, and then a second entry with level A suits to stop the leak. This is we don't have very many rail calls here in Vermont. They come up once in a while. I think in the 5 years I've been on the team, this is the first one that I can remember in the last 5 years. I don't know, Pat, maybe there was some other one that I don't remember, but I don't remember us having level A suits on top of a rail car in the last 5 years.
They happen pretty infrequently.
Yeah.
But this was kind of just the remoteness and the difficulty of getting to these scenes. And so it was kind of buried deep in a rail yard. You can see car was well labeled, had all its appropriate placarding. And for us, luckily, it was greasy side down. A lot of times these are leaking in there as a result of some kind of rail transportation emergency. So lucky for us, it was just one car. You can see on the side of the rail car there where it was rolling down the side, like Bob had said, and they were able to put a bucket underneath it. So a good test, a good showing of the team's capabilities. Great showing by the local municipalities, understanding of the incident, as well as performing their decon duties as one of our MOU teams.
Oh, yeah.
So an all around, for lack of a better term, a great call, right? Some real good research, some good technical skill sets, and great support from our local MOUs.
You want to
All
go
right.
over the ammonia call?
Sure,
That
yeah.
was another interesting call.
So this was the week before. This was a Thursday before. Killington Fire went out to a apartment building for a smell of ammonia in the basement. They arrived on scene and found that there was a slight haze in this garage. This is a 4-story apartment building with a basement level parking garage with an entry off the back of the building. And as they went into that, they had a couple of haze areas and some smell of ammonia. We had 2 cars in the parking lot. And our first thought, as crazy it is the nefarious thought of someone trying to make methamphetamine utilizing the red P method. It's a very old method, but that is one of the more common non-facility based ammonia releases we'll get. And being that there were 2 cars of unknown origin in the basement, we couldn't ID right off. That was our thought. Maybe there was a propane tank that had been filled with ammonia. The valve had failed, like they do, and we were getting a release, especially in the effect of getting a cloud as a report. So we started with one truck, again, truck 2, out of Rutland. That truck responded with a crew, myself, and this was one of those really, really hot days as well. The crew was, I think it was 88 degrees in Killington that day. So an extremely warm day. So not too long after, we did request the CST, as well as we upgraded it to a tier 3 incident, which brings in a second truck for us. So we had truck 2 and truck 1, as well as support from the Division of Fire Safety in Boston Honorable, who's in the office right now, for some water support and ice and cooling. We made entry originally with one of our UAS incident units into the basement. We're able to get a license plate using that drone inside, and we're able to run the plate and find out that it was an individual that worked there. Killington PD made contact with that individual, and that kind of thought of a nefarious actor really kind of went out the wayside. We were able to validate the other car as someone, and it was also not something we were able to do. So we made an entry into the building and started getting levels above 10 parts per million. So we back out, re-geared up into level A. We were trying to stay away from level A as much as we could due to the heat, but due to the circumstances, unfortunately, we had to make that entry. So we got into some level A suits, made the entry in, and started assessing the vehicle, started meeting the area, trying to find the source. We were looking for some piping, the tank, anything really. And we spent some good time, probably 3 or 4 hours, just investigating every little nook and cranny with multiple entries from multiple crews. We set up some ventilation fans to see if that would mitigate it. It would not. Our final solution, probably about 11 o'clock, after a good 6 or 7 hours of looking at every nook and cranny, isolating it to one general location where we were getting 50 parts per million, which was a corner that was slightly wet, but also had a vent fan near it. And we decided we were going to try to rinse the floor and just use the natural absorption of ammonia to water to try to suck it out from wherever it was. Maybe we get a bigger root, but we needed to figure out where this water was going in the drain system. That took a little bit of time to figure out the drain of that. It ended up getting really lucky, and it all went to the wastewater district. So we made contact with them, let them know it was coming, and that the water was pretty low. We were getting some pH of 10 in some locations, but we were pretty right around neutral from most of the water. And so brought in a tanker from Bridgewater, and we flushed the entire basement from both sides, and we got it down to about 1 to 2 parts per million. And so at about 2 o'clock, we decided, like safety and everyone else that had made multiple entries, that we would just kind of isolate, deny entry, and come back at it the next day. And so we also had a contractor lined up for the next day. Contractor came in the next day. They did some etching and tried to figure out if it was in the concrete. We were unable to get it in the concrete. Did some more research. We had found out earlier in the day before that they had spray foamed and also put intumescent paint over that foam in the basement. And then we worked the next week with an industrial hygienist to get some more technical level testing. And we found out, it was probably that next week, next Sunday, that the intumescent paint that's applied to the foam, some of these intumescent paints are made with an ammonia. And that ammonia creates the actual barricade for the heat and dissipates the heat. So when it is in a high heat environment and it is applied in a cold climate, it tends to off gas ammonia. And so this was applied in November and on a really cold day. So it did not cure appropriately. And then the ammonia during those 3 days of high heat here in June started to off gas into this garage. We connected with some industry specialists. Spray foam industry specialist out of Boston. And that gentleman said, yes, there are 4 or 5 spray foam intumescent paint, fire retardant paints that he stays away from because of this off-gassing phenomenon. So definitely an interesting scenario. Took a little bit of time, but we brought in the right partners. They were able to do some testing, and we learned a valuable lesson about this possibility. So it's the intumescent paint that actually was the culprit, not the foam itself, but the intumescent paint that was applied to get the fire rating of the steel in that basement level garage that created this off gas of ammonia, and you got a real strong ammonia smell from it. We were with the state's toxicologist as well to see if there were any adverse effects or anything like that. We were all well below any of the OSHA or industry standards for exposure to any of the residents. So the solution to mitigate this was to install some pretty significant 24 to 36-inch vent fans and continuously ventilate that for 24 to 48 hours. And they said that 9 times out of 10 will remedy the issue moving forward. The real solution is to make sure that intumescent paint has a cure time which is not exceeding its temperature cure. So in this case, it was applied in a temperature setting that was not appropriate for its installation. And that's why down the road, when we had a hot day, it started its fire retardant method of trying to prevent whatever was burning, but it was just the environment. So it was a good learning experience, and got a lot of agencies involved. We're able to hopefully mitigate it. The occupants of the building were able to get back in about a week later. We haven't had any reoccurring issues there since.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate for the occupants. They were, I think, Pat, I think they were out of that building. This is a 4-story condominium building, so quite a few people live in this building. And they were out, I think, for a week, right?
At least a week, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was another interesting call for us, and we unfortunately or fortunately, we learn a lot on a lot of these calls. This particular ammonia call was very, very unusual, not something that we ever would have anticipated or could have figured out without the help of some people who are experts in that intermittent paint and foam application. Anything else you have?
Yeah, the last 2 items, just a couple of training things that we were working with local municipalities for. We were in Middlebury with our friends out of Agrimark for a man down drill, and conducted a level A RIT recovery and familiarization of the facility there. I believe FD may have had someone there, but I can't remember. I missed that training that day. But we invited local fire departments as well. And the other was a very successful 3 or 4 days with the Agency of Natural Resources, Vermont, UVM's UAS lab, their spatial analysis lab, the EPA, as well as Shelburne Fire. We spent a bunch of days across different GRSs, which are the geographical response strategies, doing some boom deployment. I'm just trying to see if I can find those pictures. And that was a real good practice for us, as well as a good practice for the partners in the fire service and the private industry to deploy a bunch of boom. So this was in Colchester. We worked with Colchester Fire, Shelburne Fire, Winooski Fire, and deployed 600, I think it was 600 feet of harbor boom in this little inlet, which is a GRS at the bottom of the Winooski, and learned a lot about different kinds of boom deployments and things of that nature. We also, USAR was part of this deployment, and we're able to put out some good training for our members as well as Shelburne. And that was the final product where the boom kind of comes across and was being collected down in this area down here. The cool thing I learned about was the EPA uses peat moss as an oil substitute. So to test these, they'll put the boom out and then they'll dump peat moss into the river. And that acts much like oil would. So it entrains into different locations and it validates or invalidates the boom engineering. And so this was the Winooski test. And this one worked really, really well. Boom placement was exactly what we needed. And it went right back to where it was. Now we're going on to a bunch of other photos. This was the GRS deployment with the Spatial Analysis Lab out of UVM. This was down the Lewis. What was the name of that, Bob? The Lewis Clark, the Lewis.
I don't know. I wasn't there for that.
Oh, right. This was Mike was there for this one. We used a lot of UAS drones for this one. This is our drone that we just put in service, and we were practicing utilizing that unit for taking pictures and analyzing the boom. That one we were not deploying boom. Shelburne was working with Republic Services, which is a contracting agency, and we worked with UVM on multiple UAS units on a live scene and how to do some mapping as well as scene visualization, and that worked out really, really well. We got some real good working time with multiple different agencies, and not all of them as response agencies. EPA was there for all of them. The last one we did not participate in. That was just a private contractor and the EPA and Shelburne Fire. And they were all of them sounded like they all went really, really well. But it was a good opportunity to practice these GRSs. The EPA contracts with a company to design, engineer these products. There are several of them. They're all available on the website. I believe it's at the Agency of Natural Resources. And they used to be called GRPs. They're now called GRSs, and they are available up and down the Connecticut River. They have these boom deployment plans, locations, strategies, as well as the Lake Champlain and the in-trails. So if you're a municipality within these areas and you have a response area around there, these plans are available online for appropriate boom location deployment. They're already kind of built, so less thinking in these larger scale incidences. You can just kind of pull them up and place the boom where you need to. So we were just testing them this last month. And that's all I have, Bob. Unless there's any questions.
I have a question. The fire departments that were involved were Shelburne, Colchester, and Winooski, did you say?
Shelburne was the primary.
Yeah.
But the Newski and Colchester were there the first day. Shelburne was there all 3 days.
Okay. Any other questions for Patrick on any of the calls? Andrew? You're muted there.
I think I'm on now. It's
Yep.
actually not call related. But you mentioned, I think, OSHA rules, and I was wondering if you guys have been paying attention to the OSHA changes and whether that's going to affect the hazmat team, especially the 15-year. I see McAllister grabbing his head already. Yeah, are you guys sweating bullets about that?
The 15-year what, Andrew, are you referring to?
Some of the other chiefs may be more familiar, but I believe it's like a 15-year age requirement for apparatus. Somebody can correct me on that.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of rules that are falling to that. Yeah, the major rule kind of.
Your audio is falling off there, Pat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, hopefully it's better now.
Yep.
So OSHA is looking to update their fire brigade and ruling. Right now, OSHA only has coverage. Federal OSHA only has coverage over private fire brigades. So if you were a private entity, not a municipality, there's limited OSHA oversight. This new rule would encapsulate most fire departments, if not all. The hazmat team is not excluded from that. And there are a myriad of different requirements. It's currently open for open public comment. Those requirements are anything from annual health screenings to requirements for fit testing to requirements that are standards within the NFPA, which is kind of what Andrew's talking about. 15-year life on apparatus is a standard that NFPA has. It's not something the state has adopted, but through this rule, they would indirectly adopt it, and the enforcement would be out of the Vermont VOSHA office as a, I don't know the exact terminology, as a plan holding state. We conduct our own OSHA regulations. So we adopt the basic standard from the feds, and then Vermont adds rules and standards to that to be above and beyond the federal standard. So anything that the federal standard has, the state of Vermont enforces, as well as adds any rules and standards under the VOSHA office. It will be a significant increase. There are a lot of good things that'll come out of that. But there's also a lot of cost and a lot of heartache that there will be to a lot of our small local municipalities and some of our much bigger departments. There's going to be, I think, a much more financial burden on the bigger departments that have, their full-time staff. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen there that'll be very difficult to manage, and never mind just implement. The administration of a lot of these is going to be a headache. Never mind the implementation of it. So yeah, we're monitoring it. Chief McAllister's, very in depth with the International Chiefs Association, as well as Chief Locke. They're all following it, as well as the director of fire safety from the fire marshal's office. But if anyone has any direct questions or needs any more comment on it, there is a availability. It's federal law, so it's very difficult to read. Not impossible, but it's 3-page, single-page legal documents that you get to read. I don't know, Chief, if you have anything else to add, Callister.
I think you covered it pretty well. And a lot of the worries are for, especially in a state like Vermont, where the feds are saying that even volunteer departments are going to have to follow this. A major concern is for the volunteers. These volunteer departments is that they're not going to be able to afford it, and all of a sudden many municipalities are going to be without volunteer fire departments or fire departments at all. And which will make, larger departments. I mean, I already cover 6 towns with my department. Are we going to have to go more? And I mean, I have to follow the regulations as well. I mean, I just got rid of 2 pieces of apparatus that were 30 years old. Now I'm going to have to try to replace those every 15. Is Windsor going to be able to afford that? Probably not. So, I mean, we're going to have to get creative. There is a lot going on. There is a lot of pushback to OSHA nationwide because of this. They're just coming out and at least they're giving us a public comment time. So there still is a lot to be heard and said from both sides, and I'm sure we're going to see some drastic changes from the original 700+ page document.
I do know that another big concern is going to be for the training side of things.
Yep.
The way that I was on a webinar and they said that a deputy chief for the FDNY would not be able to actually be a chief of his volunteer department in Long Island because he didn't have the training requirements needed to be a volunteer chief. And of those training requirements, 21 states offer the training requirements that they're trying to impose. State of Vermont does not offer those training requirements or those courses. And last I knew, there was a very, very, very small number of chiefs in the state of Vermont that I actually think would meet the requirements that are necessary. And some
Mike
of them are
Skaza,
career chiefs.
are you on, Mike Skaza?
Yes, I am.
There he
Do
is.
you have any comments, Mike? I hate to put you on the spot, but
I think we're watching this closely as well. I think that, one of the concerns that we have heard repetitiously is that there's no recognition of the training and qualifications that incumbent firefighters are having. It's not giving any recognition for the people that are currently doing the job and are very well qualified in what they're doing. But yeah, we're watching it closely. Keep in mind, this is a proposal, and if history repeats itself, this proposal will change significantly between now and what is actually adopted, but that depends on everyone making public comments. So submit those comments. Last time I looked, there were just over 2,000 public comments, which is kind of sorrowful given the size of the fire service in the United States. So we need to all just take a minute and submit a comment. It's super easy.
It's still July 22nd for the deadline, or 21st?
It is. To my knowledge, it has not been extended yet again.
and we could point out here that around over 90% of the firefighters in Vermont are volunteers. So this could really, I know for my department, if it went through as written, and as Mike pointed out, it'll probably change. But if it went through as written, we would have to retire a pumper truck, bringing us from 2 to 1. I think we would lose probably a significant amount of our 15-member membership if it all went through. So if you haven't made a comment, it would be helpful, I think, for everybody, including the public, that comments are made about it.
Could I just as a follow, I didn't mean to open what I know is a can of worms about that. And I guess specifically about, hazmat and I guess keeping an eye on, equipment requirements, and then, just listening to Pat about the importance of the first responders on the ground and whether there's going to be any need for contingency planning, because that's basically your eyes and ears and containment, for the first, I don't know, minutes, hours till you guys can get on scene. Just kind of putting that on the radar as something to be, I know you guys are already on top of it, but thinking about for future years, if our volunteer force, which in Addison County, we almost entirely are, if we start to dwindle, then all of a sudden we're, response times slow down and containment slows down. So Just a point of concern, not to ratchet things up. Sorry.
No, it's definitely a point of concern. So our responses
Your volume's again down, Pat.
our responses, as it is being a rural state. Again, we're definitely trying. We're putting on, hopefully here, an additional full-time hazmat staff member with that LEPC position. I've added 5 additional hazmat technicians. We've only got 1 more to fill, and so we're not staying stagnant, and we are continuing to work with our local municipalities. We just got Rutland a brand new decon trailer through some Homeland Security funds, and continuing. But yeah, without our partners, we don't really exist. So we need our municipal partners to be the eyes and ears, and so facilitating that and getting the public comment out is really important. And both me and Mike at the exact same time put the links for the public comment in the discussion notes, and I also threw the link for the GRSs in there as well.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Kevin, for your comments. Thanks for the question, Andrew. It's not really a can of worms. It's something very important, and it does certainly affects the LEPC, because the LEPC is all about response to local emergencies. So statewide emergencies, local emergencies. So it's definitely a concern and an issue. Let's see. Do I have any other comments, public comments? Open it up for any public comments. Again, a shortened meeting because our guest speaker could not make it. But any other comments from anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry, I'll just keep going until somebody cuts me off. Pat, you mentioned LEPC, I think, position hiring, or hazmat position hiring. Is that the same one that's been causing you headaches for the last 2 years? Okay. Is there progress on
Yep. So it's at finance and administration at it's the agency of finance and administration. So my commissioner and everyone has signed off on everything. Classification, which is the ones that look at the job description and everything, they've approved everything. So it's been classified into the state pay rate system, and we just need finance and management to give it the green light. There's funding allocated to it, and so I did poke our financial director last week again, and he was going to follow up on it. It did kind of get a little bit sidelined during the end of fiscal year. The finance office, they get a little busy, and I do need to give them a little bit of space, but I'm not going to slow down in pushing. So I did poke the bear again. So we'll see what happens.
Pat, what's the title for that job position?
Hazmat compliance officer.
Okay, thanks. In that position, for everybody's knowledge, based on what Pat has told me, will also help out on the LEPC a fair amount. Okay, that's all I have. If any, again, open it up. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
I had a quick thing to add, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Brad.
Thanks. So I'm Brad Roy with Vermont Rural Water Association, and many of you probably aren't familiar with our organization, but we work with drinking water and wastewater treatment facilities all over the state and provide training and technical assistance and emergency response, heavily involved with the Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network, which is also in conjunction with the state of Vermont. So a number of emergency response actions for water and wastewater systems. And I just wanted to touch, earlier we were talking about S310, which is now Act 143. And another part of that our organization has been a little bit involved with is now there is an official first responder designation for water, wastewater, and stormwater personnel. So that's something that we ran into some issues during the big flooding events where water treatment plant operators weren't allowed to go to their treatment plants to get things back online, get water production happening, provide water for fire protection, provide safe drinking water, all those kinds of things. So this was something that some legislators were involved with, some water, wastewater people involved with, and just wanted to kind of bring a little bit of awareness and open the opportunity that we want to get the word out a little bit and make sure that people who are responding to water and wastewater emergencies are actually able to get to their facilities and do the work that needs to be done to get these back online. So I just wanted to mention that as part of that bill, part of that act, and make sure everyone was aware. And if anyone had questions or ideas on how to get that information out to more emergency planners, that would also be completely welcome. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. If you're interested, we would be happy to have you give a short presentation on Vermont Rural Water Association to the LEPC at some point in the future.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I know Liz Royer, our executive director, would be on board for that as well. She wasn't able to make this meeting, but I know at face value, it doesn't seem like our organization necessarily fits in this group, but there's, I think, a lot more relationship there than maybe meets the eye at first glance. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean.
I'll add to that, Brad. There's I think it was 2018 Federal Clean Water Act requires that any hazmat spills or chemical spills within the watershed are now required to be a notification to the water control unit, the water sheds control section, as well as gives watersheds and water districts access to all tier 2 documents for chemical storage facilities within their jurisdictions. So if there is a water district that is interested in understanding the chemicals that are stored within their watershed, they have legal access to those documents as first responders, just like you had spoken. So I think you're 100% right on. There's a significant amount of connection between the protection of watersheds and the mitigation of hazards and getting clean public drinking water and wastewater operational is a basic necessity.
Yeah, thank you.
And Emily's trying to get you for next year's VEM conference.
Yeah, every time you speak, you sign yourself up for something without knowing.
Well, unfortunately, we can't do any more presentations this year. We're actually overbooked at this point with that. But yeah, please come and attend the conference, everyone on this call. It's a great place to meet people. And then next year, you can sign up to give a presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Andrew?
Just got one more for Pat. Since you mentioned tier 2 and Brad said something about every time you say something, you sign yourself up for something else. Tier 2 records, are they up on the dashboard? I was trying to check and couldn't find my login.
Not up on the dashboard yet, but if you need them, I can get them to you.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Any other comments? Anyone else want to make any announcements, comments? All right. That'll be all for today. I'll mark the time down here as 11 o'clock. We'll adjourn, and our next meeting will be October 22nd. So put that in your calendar. And hopefully we'll have Len Wallace, USA